Today we're looking at translations, H and K. We've done them, but there's going to be a form that we're looking at. We're looking at a vertex form of the parabolic equation. When a parabola with the equation x squared equal 4py or y squared equal 4px is translated horizontally by h and vertically by k, the vertex of the parabola moves to hk. So it goes from 0, 0 to hk. Such a translation does not change the focal length, the focal width, or the direction of the parabola opens which way, whether it's up, down, left, or right. The stuff we learned on day 1 about p being negative or positive tells us it's going to be open if it's negative, down if it's the x squared equal 4py version, it'll open left. If it's the x squared or y squared equal 4px version, it'll look right if it's the x squared equal positive 4py version. Remember, if p tells us which way it's going to go. Vertex is halfway between p and the directrix. I expect that the directrix is graphed when we graph. If you're dropping it, you're missing a point. Okay, when I grade it for the chapter test when we do it. Okay, so keep that in mind as we're going through. Now, again, if I've got H, and they got K plus P, I don't expect you to memorize that stuff. I expect you to know what P does. I expect you to know what the change of H and K does and which way it's open. And everything else takes over, okay, as you're doing the graph. So let's look at that specifically, okay? Because I got know this, but you got to know how it affects this. The big things that you really need to know is what's happening with the standard equation, which way it opens, what the difference between focus, directrix, axis, and focal length are, okay? And notice that what's going on with the focal width. Focal width and your focal width is how wide it is across the focus. Focal length is all about P. Okay, and those are absolute values as we step through. But as you do these problems today, you're going to start realizing what's happening with stuff. Okay, now to graph or write an equation for parabola from given features, sketch and label what you were given, locate and plot the vertex if not given. Okay, determine the focal length P and the focal width, absolute value 4P. That's in the standard equation, that 4py, the 4px, it's there. Use focal width to locate endpoints of the chords through the focus. Sketch the parabola, determine which direction it opens, and write the equation. Now, here's the thing. By the time you're sketching, I'm really hoping that you've determined which direction it's opening. Okay, matter of fact, that's one of the top things you should be looking at. So let's look at this. If I've got this situation, remember, X, Y, H, K for my vertex, okay? Now, right now, I don't know anything about the graph itself until I put in my vertex and my focus. So let's put those in, plot those two values. So if I got vertex at 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's my V. I'm just gonna put in there a V. And then I've got my focus, if we got 5, 4. So I got 3, 4, 5, 4. That's my focus. Now remember, the parabola arcs around the focus going through the vertex. So I've got a P automatically that's a positive 2 because it's directed. It tells me it's 2 away from the vertex and it's positive to the right. Are you in agreement with 4 so far? Excuse me, 2. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the directrix. It's 2 back from the vertex. So I've got 2 back. I've got my directrix. Okay, and remember the significance of the directrix and the focus. Anywhere along the parabola, the distance from the parabola to the focus and parabola back vertically, or I should say perpendicularly, okay, not vertically, in this case it's horizontally, is the same, okay? So when we're doing these, you just got to keep in mind, those same properties go through, whether it's sideways or it's up and down. Now, my next thing, I've already determined that it's going to be an X or a Y squared variety. It's open right. So this is open right. Okay. because the directrix is the backside. It's going to be open right. And x equal y squared is my open rights and lefts. But since it's open right, I know 4p, I've got that y k squared, and I've got 4p x minus h. Okay, going on for me. That's the general form that I'm going to be working with today. Questions so far? Yes?
How'd you get P's?
That p? It's the general form of my parabola, standard form when I've got h and k. Oh, this p. Okay, so the question's out, how did I get the p being 2? It's the distance, and it shows direction from my vertex to my focus. That's the focal length. Okay, does that make sense? And now after I've got that focal length, keep in mind my focal width. This is focal length. My focal width is about how wide my parabola is, across F, my focus, and also is 4p, is the absolute value of 4p. Okay, so I put 2 in, and I find out that it's 8. So I can come up now with my standard form of my equation, y minus 4, quantity squared, equal 8 x minus 3. So I've got my formula for my parabola as I'm going through. I got my focal width. So now I can finish out graphing my parabola. So across the focus, I go 4 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I go 4 down, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've got this graphed, showing my vertex, my directrix, my focus, and my sketch, along with my standard form of the parabola that's been translated from 0, 0. Questions about what I did? Now, I didn't memorize what my directrix was going to be. I had my vertex, I had my focus, and the theme is vertex is halfway between focus and directrix. It's the perpendicular distance going through. It's half of that as you go through. So there are commonalities in both that I generalize. I don't memorize all that stuff. I think, okay, what's my focal length? How is it related? Focal length, vertex to focus. Okay, the sign gives me, if it went right, it's positive. If it went left, it would be negative. And that'd be making other adjustments for things. Okay, the equation for directrix. In this particular case, it's x equal a value because it's vertical. If I have it pointing up or down, it would be y equal a value because it's horizontal. Okay, going back to algebra stuff. Outside of that, 4p is straight in my standard form. It also is my focal width. The absolute value is my focal width, and be able to pull that up. Yes, sir.
So did you get your 2 points because you went 4 side because
Yep. So the first thing I did, I got 3, right? 3, 4, because they told me that's the vertex. Then the next thing I did was 5, 4, and I got the 2 right here because of the difference between that.
Okay, so then you went from the focal 4 each way.
Yep, and that is my focal width, and it's halfway, half of 8. Any other questions for clarification? Doing okay? Head bobbles are good. Okay. Now, this next part, graphing by hand allows us to see the structure and relationships of the parabola and its features. If we need an accurate active graph, we can use the calculator. Okay, now, keep in mind, depending on the parabola, okay, as it's going, can you actually graph a parabola that's in this direction? This y squared parabola, because remember, all my y's are y1 equals, y2 equals, y3. They're to the first power. And along with that, I can only graph functions. I've got a issue here because this isn't a function because I got 2 values for the same input, right? 2 outputs, same input. So I have to make an adjustment when it's in this form. When it's in the other form, you're used to seeing parabolas in the, x squared variety all the time. It's the y squared one that has an issue when we graph. So when we're doing this, you can graph this quite quickly. It's like we got a vertex, vertex is 3, 4. Okay, my P is, remember, when I find P, it's 4P equal 8. Divide by 4, P is 2. Okay, so I know that I've got P is 2 on this. I know my focal length. This is also focal length. And if I go through this and I just have a graph coming through, I'm going to take my 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's my vertex. And I've got y squared, so it's positive. So it's going to point to the right as I go through. And I got a P of 2, so I've got 3, 4. This is the same graph that we just did as I'm going through. And I've got my 8s here coming up. And I've got this going. And as I graph. Those are the things I should be able to quickly graph as I step through it. But now, how do I do it with the graphing calculator? Okay, it's a great tool. Okay, I got to take the square root of both sides. That's thing one. So I've got y minus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 8. I'm not going to make anything crazy or funky. I'm just going to be there. Okay, and then I'm going to add 4. So I've got y equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 8x minus 3. Okay, now keep in mind, it's not a function. If I just graph it the way it is right now, I got to separate it in my calculator, in the GC. I need to go, hey, y1 is 4 plus 8x minus 3, and y2 is 4 minus 8x minus 3. Okay, I've got to enter those two. Please do those. I have people that have difficulties with this. Now I want to make sure that this is something that's covered. Okay, so make sure you check those out and see where it's going. As you're doing it, as I'm walking around checking questions that people will have, we have 4 questions left. Okay, and those 4 questions that are left are here on that next page. I have a couple people that don't have it because I ran out of copies. I'm just going to make a quick copy of it so that I can get a couple others, okay, and hand it out to them. But right now you're practicing entering in your calculator, and then after you do that, you have these next 4 questions that you're answering, okay? Before I go, Miss Olson, you have a question? Okay,
You could
yep.
technically do it by hand.
Oh, yeah, there's going to be numbers, maybe, perhaps, that are tough, but I wanted to make sure that you could check your work. Okay, does that make sense? Because you'll have the graphing calculator next to you, and it's like sometimes, you know, when there'll be 2 options on this one as well, I think. So we're going to do calculator, no calculator, but I've got to confer with the others. But you got to keep in mind, you have the calculator, which is a great tool, okay? Check your work. I mean, a lot of times when you just get going, you grab the wrong equation. And it kind of like double checks you. So it's kind of nice. You're like, ooh, why is that sideways? And I didn't do it sideways. So, you know, it's nice to be able to confer and then move on, but you can't confer if you don't know how to enter it in. Okay, right? Okay, that's our first one. And the first question was how the -2 came about. And it was just 4p is equal to -8, and you solve for p. Okay. The second one, as we're going through, I've got an x squared variety, and I look at it as the general because we still have that h and k. We've done that transformational stuff. And I'm looking at this, and I still got p is going to be 4p equal 12. And remember, this is focal length. So p is equal to 3. Okay, are there any questions about where I got that? Okay, vertex is going to come out as -1, +5. So I'm going to go -1, +5. And I've got my P is 3, and it's a +3, so it's 1, it's open up though, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's my focus. My directrix is 3 back, 1, 2, 3. You okay with focus and directrix are opposite sides of the vertex itself? Okay, so those are the things that are always consistent, so I don't memorize it, just that's what I do with the parabolas. So I kind of group everything that's there. My P, my focal length is 3. It shows me when it's positive, the distance from the vertex. and my vertex was negative 1, 5. 3 more units, I got my focus, which is negative 1, 8. Okay, so I got my focus sitting at negative 1, 8 if I'm asked where it's at. Okay, and then I got my directrix. My D is going to be a horizontal line in this case because I've determined already because of that x squared, it's opening up, and it's up because of the 12. It could be up or down because of the x squared. And then I'm looking at my focal width, which is 12, so I've got 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just get that popped in. And I didn't put my directrix in. Y equals 2. Are you okay with those values and where they're coming from? Is it feeling comfortable? Yeah. Well, the x is negative 1. The y is positive 5. It is. It is just like we've been reading it as we go with that h and k, because our general formula is x minus h quantity squared equal 4p y minus k. Okay, so I just read h and k, and as long as I have that negative, I'll be fine. Any other questions? Yes, sir. How do I find the axis itself? Well, the thing is, when I get the vertex and I have p, it automatically gives me my axis, whether it's horizontal axis or vertical axis. And I decide horizontal vertical based on that. Okay, so are you okay with me finding P? That's a directed measurement from my vertex, which means if it's positive, it's going to go either to the right of my vertex or vertical from my vertex because it's positive. If it were negative, it would go to the left from my vertex or down from my vertex. Does that make sense? So then the axis itself of the parabola is created based on the formula I have. If it's x squared, well then it's an up and down, it's a vertical axis. And from that, that's why I was able to do this to go up there. Okay, that determined it from my vertex. I pop my vertex on, and now I've got 4 choices of which direction it's going to go. Does that help? Okay, yeah. Yes, you may. Any other questions on this one? Okay, when I've just got points, vertex 1, negative 2. Okay, and focus 4, negative 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 2. I already know I'm opening to the right. That I'm opening that direction. I don't know anything else, but I do know that right off the bat. Are you okay with that? Okay, because I was given the vertex, and I'll even put that in red. And I popped that down, didn't I? Should be 1, yeah, negative 2. That's good. And we go 4, negative 2. My P is 3, but it's positive 3 because it's going to go to the right. Okay, so based on this, I got a P that's going to be positive 3. Okay, because it's going to go to the right. I have a directrix that's a vertical x. That's 3 back from my vertex. 1, 2, 3. That's going to be x equal negative 2. Now, what determines my focal width? Because that's my focal length, my P. My focal width is the absolute value of 4P. Well, that's just going to be 12. That's my focal width. Okay, so I got a focal width. I've cut that in half, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my estimate, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is off. I'm just going to change that, little dots, and get rid of those because they're in my way. My graph's going to go off like that. Okay, but now I've got to get my equation. Okay, as I'm going, remember, it's y squared. It should be y plus 2 squared. I got 12, my focal width. Well, positive 12 because it goes to the right. Where's my x? X minus 4. As I get that done from my standard form equation. Okay, is it making sense? Last one, directrix and focus. Vertex is between the two. okay? But it lies on a line perpendicular to the line of the directrix. Yeah, which one did I do?
In the equation number 3, wouldn't it be x minus 1 to be your equation?
Where's 3? Oh, yeah, it should be x minus 1. Wait. Yep, I grabbed the focus and the vertex and the wrong ones. I apologize for that. Put everything else in and I grabbed the wrong numbers. So I've got -2, plus 2, minus 1. Thanks for catching that, you guys. I apologize for throwing in the focus. Okay. Now, last one, my vertex. I've got to find halfway between 0, -4. So I got 0, -4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that one's going to be my focus. Directrix is y equals 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So that's my y equals 6. And I got my 0, 4. I've got 5 as my p. Okay, because that's half of 10. Okay. So p is equal to 5. And I've got to come up with the idea of which direction. Is it positive or negative? Well, half of that is right here. But remember, the distance from my vertex down to my focus is -5, or my direction and distance. That's why it's -5 versus +5. So it's going to open down. Does that make sense? That's my focal length. My focal width. Okay, my focal width as I'm working with it is the absolute value of 4p, which is 20. So I got 10 on either side of my focus. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hey, 10's out here and 10's on the other side. And from my vertex, that was right there at 1. We can slide that down a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so I've got my graph set, but now I can write my equation that is in the x, oh, I suppose I should put the vertex in here. I got 0, 1. X squared equal my focal length 20, but it's a -20, y minus 1 as I go through. Any other follow-ups on the graph itself or the equation for that graph? Directrix, focus, focal length, focal width. Those are the nuances of this problem. Everything else, I didn't memorize those things as far as it goes. I just know that on the axis of the graph itself, you have the vertex and the focus, and those are a distance apart of the focal length. Okay? Are there any other follow-ups? All right, great questions. Thank you for your time today.